Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of our webinar today, where we're going to discuss this roller coaster of COVID that we've been on and what we can do about it. My name is Pete Caproni. I am faculty at NSU College of Psychology. I also am the consulting and supervising psychologist at NSU University School. And I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Eric Thompson.
Hi, everybody. Eric Thompson here. I am a newly promoted associate professor here at Nova Southeastern, and I teach primarily in the counseling department, particularly the school counseling program, as well as the clinical mental health program. I'm a registered clinical mental health intern. I just saw a chat pop up. And so I'm working both with children, adults, and so this is one of my areas of interest. I've also have some interest and experience with mindfulness and contemplative training, as well as working with folks with PTSD and trauma-informed care. So with that, I see people telling us where they're from. So Thank you all for coming, and go ahead, Dr. Caproni.
Yeah, we're coming to you from, I'm on campus here at Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we're delighted to see folks from different parts of Florida, North Carolina, New Jersey,
Utah.
There we go, Utah, West Palm.
New York.
Sarasota. All right, very good. So keep putting those in. We like to see where our folks are participating from. Today, we were going to talk to you about going back to work in a post-COVID environment. Obviously, that is not true. Hey, Michelle, I see you. This is one of those things where I get distracted too easily because I love seeing our old students that come back to us. However, as all of you know, and as we know, we are not in a post-COVID environment. And this is more like a roller coaster. Some people would say we signed up for a half marathon, and all of a sudden we're at the end of that half marathon, and it ain't finished yet. And honestly, we don't really know when it's going to be finished or how it's going to be finished. So some of that uncertainty, I think, plays into what we want to share with you today. And hopefully we'll hear some, things from you guys too. We're going to have time at the end, for some questions and answers and for your contributions. We really do want this to be a conversation. Let's see, I think before I go to our roadmap for where we're going today, perhaps, Eric, this would be a good time to do a brief mindfulness exercise.
All right, great. Oh, I see the last chat here. We have someone from Long Island. Wow, people all around. Very cool. So glad you're all here.
And I think that's someone I know. Hello there.
Is it? Yeah. You know that one. All right. Great. All right. So here, we're kind of modeling this approach here where we're going to go back and forth between our main topic of managing COVID and also working with some of these contemplative relaxation grounding exercises. There's nothing religious here, so you don't have to worry about any evangelism or anything like that. I'm not trying to change anyone's opinions. We're just going to use some techniques that have some history, have some experience being very beneficial, and some of that has to do with mindfulness of breath, relaxation. And one of the things we're going to focus on right now is a quick grounding exercise. And this can be used in many, many scenarios. I find it very useful for me just right before I begin doing something. If I just need a moment to, take a breath and ground myself before I enter a class or do anything really. So it just kind of, you're basically just connecting it with your senses. So let's try it. So if you just get comfortable, you don't need to sit in a formal meditation posture or anything. Just kind of sit comfortably, so that you can be nice and relaxed. Let's take about maybe 1 minute. If you can, just take note, acknowledge 5 things that you see around you. So here we're becoming aware of our visual field. So for me, I'm looking at the computer, so I see the computer, I see light. I look in my room, I can see my guitar. I'm in a recording studio. I see a couple paintings. Okay, so you get the idea, 5 things. So you have 5 things that you're aware of. Okay, so now we're going to shift modalities into 4 things that you can touch around you. And it could be hair, pillow, clothing, so on. Just take note of 4 things that you can touch and just kind of touch base with those 4 items. You can notice the qualities. Is it hard, heavy, soft, fluffy? Okay, so now we'll move on to the next domain. Let's move into hearing. So what are 3 things that you can hear? I'm speaking, so maybe you could hear the sound of my voice. It could be an external sound, like a fan, your belly rumbling. Things, and maybe there's things you can hear outside of your body as well, especially if you don't have headphones on. Okay, moving modalities here. What are 2 things that you can smell? Now, if you have a mask on, your field of smell may be limited. So if you're in your office, maybe you smell a pencil, and so on. So just take a moment. See if you can distinguish 2 smells that are in the air. It could be subtle, it could be strong. Okay, and finally, we'll move on to the next final one. So acknowledge one thing that you can taste. So basically, what does the inside of your mouth taste like? The gum, coffee, maybe a sandwich from lunch, or something like that. So any leftover flavors, or if you're chewing gum or something right now, you could put something in your mouth like gum or a piece of chocolate. That could help. And then here is, again, just to move yourself away from this kind of this cloud of thinking, this circular thinking, and it put you into a different domain. So we explored 5 different domains, our senses. So that's kind of one start to just kind of grounding and touching base with what's going on inside you. Go ahead, Dr. Caproni.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. If Carlos doesn't tell me otherwise, I think we're okay. So we're going to try to take a look at how we can accept the changes that we've experienced in our lives, obviously not all of them positive, and how at some point we're able to maybe see the opportunities that are with us presently and what may be ahead of us. We want to think about how our mental health and our wellness connects with our productivity in work and how we can better manage our work-life balance in this COVID context. We're going to talk a little bit about negotiating boundaries diplomatically in the workplace, particularly when we're going to need to be assertive about our needs as opposed to what our work environment may need from us, and how we can employ something called strategic assertion, which we're going to demonstrate in a little role play, and how to confront in an empathetic manner. Finally, we're going to talk about some of the other kinds of supports that many of you have probably accessed, but some of you may not have. We want to talk about demystifying the counseling as well as psychotherapy, how to think of problems in living versus psychopathology, what a growth mindset can contribute to our benefit at this point, and how to open ourselves to the possibility of something called post-traumatic growth. We'll wind up with another mindfulness exercise, and again, giving you an example of what we can do starting right now. And we're going to leave a fair amount of time at the end to talk about your access to resources that you might think you would want to explore, and questions and answers. So.
It's an ambitious agenda.
It is ambitious, and I think we may move quickly. We're going to try to be a little spontaneous with this, because again, this was set up before we came into our current situation of uncertainty and additional stress. So one of the things I want to talk a little bit about, and this is kind of taken loosely from acceptance and commitment therapy, is how none of us like painful feelings that are confusing or persistent. And a lot of times we sort of want to push them off in a corner. We want to deny them. We really want to just get on with our daily business and not really think about how our lives have changed and how that may affect us in terms of emotionally. For some of you, this may take the form of sort of a sort of vague, gnawing depression, or a sense of, my plans are sort of put on hold in this particular area, or they may be derailed in another area. So one powerful way of moving forward is to give ourselves the permission to accept what we're feeling, especially if these are negative feelings around changes or losses that we've experienced through COVID. These are valid feelings, and we need to accept them as such. And then we can move forward and start to focus on what kind of changes are within our capability. With acknowledgement to the folks in Alcoholics Anonymous, the idea of, what can we courageously move forward and try to change? What do we need to accept? And how do we tell the difference between those two? So we also want to look at really focusing in on being more mindful in terms of how we approach our lives. We want to pay attention to our personal values and how we're enacting those in our daily life. And finally, making a commitment to action. What are some of the things that we're not doing that we need to do? I don't know about you guys, but I haven't been very good with physical exercise. And at my age, that's a pretty important thing to do. So part of a commitment to action for me should be really starting to really get serious about some regular physical exercise, as an example. So some of the examples that we may apply these things to, as I just mentioned, are self-care. Our social lives, which have obviously taken a hit in many different ways during the pandemic. As we said, we're going to explore some of the workplace applications of this. And finally, for those of you who have been involved in any kind of a religious or spiritual practice, that's taken a hit too, in terms of being able to comfortably gather with a lot of people. So these are some of the issues that we want to try to touch on today. And let's see.
And some of the things that come up while we're kind of switching over, that I've seen in my life and other people is, with things changing so rapidly, you almost, you get the sense that, okay, things are getting better and we're going to move forward now. So I can start planning. I can start feeling things are more stable, feeling that sense of security and forward thinking. And then all of a sudden there's another wave or another close down or some other thing pops up. A kid gets exposed at school. Now you have to stay at home for a couple of weeks. And it's just, how do you manage that uncertainty of, how can I just move my life forward? And so with that uncertainty there can be freezing, there can be flight responses, kinds of things like that. And so here's some of the stuff that we're going to share to help with managing that as well.
Okay, so many of you have gone through different phases of working at home or working at the office, and that's something that is a continuing struggle, dilemma in trying to figure out how best to manage it. And that's obviously something you have to negotiate, with your workplace too. For many of us, it's been very important as we work from home to try to establish a routine that's similar to what we had at the office. So for me, that would involve getting up at the same time in the morning, putting on the same clothes that I'm going to do, including pants, because we're on Zoom, so and shoes and socks and all that kind of stuff. That to me has helped give a sense of routine and security. I think that not everything has changed. This work-life balance issue was always complex, particularly for those of us with families. It's much more complex now, obviously. We want to be discussing boundaries that have changed for us. When some of us work from a 9 to 5 kind of perspective, we could pretty well do away with work after 5 o'clock. That's not so easy now because we've got this more constant availability that has come into play during the pandemic. Okay, so I think, Eric, this is where we were going to try to do that. Let's see. I think this is probably a good point. Maybe I'll stop sharing if I can do that without messing this up, and we can do our role play.
Sure. And you can see on this how to cope slide, there's some basic techniques or ideas that we're implementing here in our discussion. We're talking, we just talked about maintaining a regular day-to-day schedule and structure if possible for that stability. And then when it comes to working with your manager or some, maybe you need some time off or you need some help, which we'll role play a little bit. There are a few things that you can do to be assertive, to confront in a way that is empathetic, that emphasizes the relationship and also maintains your relationship with your coworker or your boss or whatever. It also helps you clarify your roles. So we're going to do a little bit of that now, I believe.
Okay, and just to be on the safe side, I think I'm not going to stop sharing. So if you can maximize on your screen our pictures and minimize the PowerPoint at the moment, I'd be more comfortable with that. Okay, so our situation is that Eric is my employee. I am the manager in a company, and we have some issues we need to talk about. And Eric has asked to come in and talk to me about those.
Right. All right. So we're gonna start off with kind of how it works out poorly, and then we're gonna see how we can switch it around to make it better. All right. So hey, Dr. Caproni, it's good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me on a busy workday. I know you have a lot going on.
Yeah, and we're going to have to really make it quick because I got a crisis coming up in about 10 minutes. So we got to.
Oh, all right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Okay. So here's the problem. I have a couple kids, as you know, and one of them was at school, and they're doing different things. They don't have their masks on or whatever, and so they got exposed. We don't know if he is sick, has the COVID virus, but with the protocols in place, I have to take time away from the office, and so I wanted to come talk to you about what we can do, and I'm kind of freaking out because I don't want to leave, and I just want to keep my job, and I really like it here.
Yeah, I understand that, Eric, and sorry to hear about your kid. We got a problem though, in that we've got a hard deadline on this project that you've been working on, and you're the team leader basically in the team that's been working on this. How are we going to get this in place, on time?
Well, that's why I came to you in the first place, because I wanted to talk to you and tell you the problem. And I wanted you to give me a sense of what I could figure out and what I could do. Like, yeah, I am the leader and I want to do well with this project. So I don't know what to do. What are we supposed to be doing? Like, I really want to focus on my kid, but I want to also help with the job. So, but my focus is shifting right now.
Okay, let's take a look at let me take a deep breath here, because this is a little more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Do you have some other members of your team that can perhaps handle some of the hands-on stuff that you've been doing?
Okay, so now we're switching it over. We're switching it to the more constructive.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, thank you for helping me kind of think about that a little bit. Some of my resources that are available. I do have a few people who are working. I've delegated the assignment to, various aspects of the assignment to various people. So I'm more in the leadership role where I'm helping manage and support people, and I think I could do that from home. Whereas, some people who have to be in front, like on campus or on the site all day, there may be different. So yeah, I think I can collaborate with them, work with them, either virtually through Zoom or by phone.
Okay, that part sounds okay. I am a little concerned that other people may feel uncomfortable that you're being treated, in some unfair kind of way, because they have to be here in the office and you're not. Do you have any thoughts about how to approach that with your team?
Well, I'm wondering if maybe I could do a brief team meeting and let them know the situation, and then we could present a plan together with the team.
All right, that sounds good. You think we're going to be able to hit this deadline?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with all the support and us working together, I think we'll nail it. I think we'll get it on time or before.
All right, Eric. My best to your wife and your child. Hope all goes well.
All right, and scene. So maybe a little process there. What happened?
Okay, what we're trying to illustrate is that there oftentimes is a way to bring two seemingly conflicting needs or perspectives into some kind of a compromise that can meet most of the needs on both sides. And honestly, sometimes that can't happen. You may run into some situations where it just doesn't happen because of the nature of the situation itself or the personalities involved in terms of their lack of flexibility. But our point is that by being empathetic and strategic in terms of your assertiveness, you maximize your chances of having a positive outcome and getting something out of it and not losing your job.
Right. And one of the things that I found that was very useful in terms of the technique that he used, either intentionally or unintentionally, was I came in there intentionally focusing on the problem and how I'm afraid of what's going on and how I'm not, wanting to get away and focus on that. Where he said, no, let's mainly focus on the task at hand and how we can tackle this issue. And that, I think, helped free up some resources for me to begin problem solving as opposed to panicking, freaking out about the dilemma that I was facing in the role play.
There you go. Okay. All right, let me move on to another screen here. Hopefully we're working good. There we go. You want to, let's see, Chuck here. Okay, some of this we've already covered before, but one of the things that we haven't talked about is how there seems to be some gender inequity in terms of how COVID has affected us. And I think you can see out there, particularly if we look at the added burden of homeschooling, not always is that on the woman in the house, but sometimes it's both of us in terms of how we're handling it. There may be some less flexibility for women in their jobs.
Oh, wait, just one second. I don't see the PowerPoint on my slides. Is that coming up on the presentation?
Uh-oh, okay. Carla,
Oh, yeah. Helen just says she doesn't see it.
She doesn't see it either?
No, it's not on.
Okay.
And while we're putting that together, it looks like someone said, Kathy says, in the positive approach, the solution was offered to the managers as opposed to asking the manager to solve it. Yep. Good insight.
Exactly. Okay, and I'm trying to figure out what our problem is here.
I can try to pull up mine if there's an issue.
Hold on, webinar, here we go. View screen. Share. I think that I'm not sharing the screen. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yeah, if you can, try to share the screen.
Let me try back to sharing screen. Okay, how about that? Can you see it now?
Yes.
But it's not there it is. Okay. You got it now?
Yeah, we're good to go. I see us and I see the PowerPoint.
Okay, good. All right, did you have anything else you wanted to say on this one, Eric, before we move on?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that kind of covered, we touched on this with the role play. And I think we're going to discuss this a little bit throughout the rest of the presentation as well. This idea of how now that we're going back and forth and there's this uncertainty, I guess that is one of the certainties, is the uncertainty. How are we going to balance this? How are we going to work these or manage these professional obligations and our home obligations? And we're also going to discuss a little bit more about what women are facing, the added burden of homeschooling and many other factors that are impacting women's experiences in their careers. So I guess that's just a teaser. All right. So this idea of an ideal worker came about a while ago, and it's this kind of the idea that you are available 24/7. You need to respond to your email, your tweets, your socials. You probably know more of that than I do. The Facebook, everything. And so, how do you manage all this, especially when you have a home life? Maybe you want to try to enjoy your life outside of work a little bit as well. And this idea that especially if you're in a parenting mode, if you're a parent, it's as if being a working parent didn't include enough moving pieces. Even toddlers are now having to do standing teleconferences. That was definitely happening during the pandemic and some throughout the nation now. So, these virtual morning preschool meetings, all these things can be really exhausting. The crisis has also shoved work and home lives under the same roof for many of us. I know this isn't really a complaint, but it's just a different way of working and living. For the last couple of years, I've been here at my house, teaching, working, raising children, being a husband, being a good friend, hopefully, and so all these different aspects of my life have been kind of happening at the same time at the same place. And so I'm sure maybe some of you have similar experiences. And so people may postulate how the country may be forever changed from this. And we hope that this shift will be a move away from the harmful assumption that a 24/7 work culture is working well for everyone. Now, some people may do well with the 24/7 work culture. And, if that's you, go for it. But some of us also would like to find balance. And so that's what we're talking about here. A lot of times, this idea of the ideal worker, it comes from this idea where organizations were built on the model of an ideal worker, where one who is wholly devoted to their job and is available 365 days a year, every day of their lives. That's kind of this idea. So it's an unrealistic archetype. It presumes a full-time caretaker in the background. But today, over 2/3 of American families are headed by single parents or two working parents. So maybe this ideal worker would work in an environment where you have caretakers, you have people, taking care of the house, taking care of the children, taking care of everything, and your whole life is about, work, preparing you to go to work. But for a lot of people, they don't experience that. Employees are disproportionately well compensated for being ideal workers, so we get rewarded for it. So I believe that's one of the reasons why it's still here. 80 to 100-hour work weeks can be typical within some companies and organizations. I'm sure maybe you've experienced it as well. Even in the gig economy, you're working 20 here, 15 there, and it all adds up. Those who ask for time off or request part-time flexible hours tend to have their performance reviews suffer, less likely to be promoted, and just asking for flexibility can create a professional stigma, and I'm sure you can imagine the stigma that comes out there. So the ideal worker expectation can be punitive, especially for those who would like to have work-life balance, and for working mothers and fathers who also typically put in more hours of caregiving work at home than their spouses. And particularly with women, it makes clear that cannot meet these expectations, including negotiating flexible work arrangements. And many organizations are not amenable to these adjustments, which lead to the perception that women are opting out of the workforce when they're actually being pushed out, according to this view. So let's go lot there. Go ahead, Dr. Kumar.
I think we covered this in terms of the accessibility and in terms of being available during off hours. What I want to focus on here, though, is some of the things that we can do to kind of counter this or manage it. And that is how we can set boundaries between work and non-work time in both time and space. So again, if you're working from home, have a designated space that you leave at the end of work time and honor those boundaries and do the same with time. Maintain the routine, as I mentioned earlier, have breakfast, dress a certain way. These are things that I think in communicating boundaries, the fourth one are pretty straightforward ones. However, one that I had not thought of was considering transition time. In my work, I have about a 25-minute drive, a rather pleasant 25-minute drive, usually not a lot of traffic between home and work. So in the morning, that gives me an opportunity to reflect on what I'm doing that day, listen to some music, and coming home especially, it gives me kind of a decompression time so that by the time I get home, I'm not so much in that work mode when I meet my wife or talk to my kids if they're visiting. I have 3 grown kids that are oftentimes in and out. So that transition time is kind of key. The other thing that occurs to me, and this may happen for some of you, around lunchtime, we used to think about having a lunch hour, or maybe even if you're a teacher, a half hour. How often doesn't that happen when our Zoom meetings overlap each other or come so close? I realized this yesterday when I had 7 minutes to grab some lunch. That's not a very good thing in terms of self-care. So that's one of the things we can also kind of work on in terms of introducing into our home office the elements of the work office that are beneficial.
Absolutely. And a special emphasis on communicating your boundaries, especially during these times. It's okay to let people, your coworkers, know You're not going to answer emails after a certain time, or that you won't take calls after a certain time. You don't have to, as we talked about, before this I started, you don't have to be mean about it. You can be skillful in how you communicate this, but to skillfully say, because of my whatever, or I would just, my preference is to answer and respond after X amount of time, after this time, and you can actually do that, or most people can. Okay, so one question that comes up that I think is kind of valuable is your institution, if you're an employer, tracking metrics that are related to availability of childcare and employee turnover. So it's very possible that you have folks who require childcare in your institution, and if those needs are not being met, maybe they're looking for other places to work. So that could definitely impact your bottom line if you're hiring folks who have families. I think we can keep going unless you had something else.
There was a global survey recently that found nearly 7 out of 10 women who experienced negative shifts in their routine as a result of the pandemic believe that their career progression will slow down.
So it doesn't necessarily mean their progression would slow down, but this is perception that, it's very likely that this is going to be a negative shift in my career path, which can lead to added stress, as you can see in the image with the computer. So they asked in the survey, what would be the most beneficial actions that your organization could take to support you in your career to ensure that you stay long term in light of COVID? So we won't go through the whole list, but I just found it interesting to see, the money talks. So the highest ranked one was promoting me, give me a pay raise. So 48% also talked about providing more flexible working options. So being able to flex from home, to have more flexible hours, things like that. I guess the third one, I guess we'll just kind of stop there, is ensuring that teams are resourced adequately. So make sure you have the right support personnel, the right staffing to provide the necessary coverage and support. And I guess finally, providing leadership, networking, and mentoring opportunities as well. So when people are feeling isolated, when they believe that there's no flexibility, this isn't necessarily treating people special. It's just responding to the context and environment in which people are living. It's really important to ensure that these teams are resourced. People are getting the connection, the outreach and support they need to do well under these challenging circumstances.
And I want to just make a comment on the other side of the slide that which emphasizes the need to individualize your approach. And again, this is from a managerial or an employer's standpoint, that one size really does not fit all in this situation. And it's important to listen carefully to see what the priorities are, of your employee.
Absolutely. Yeah, so and I thought that's interesting, this idea about women without caregiving responsibilities emphasize wanting more skill development opportunities versus the 33% when compared to those with caregiving. So they also favored greater access to senior leaders in the organization and greater learning and development. So having children can have an impact on, as we know, on our career development. So talking about mobility, they asked, when you consider what is required to move up in your organization at this moment, what causes you to question whether you want to progress? And again, this is, I believe, mostly women. So only those who indicated that they question progressing. So if they were thinking, I'm going to progress, I'm not too worried, they weren't really included in this sample. This is those who were questioned and they think, yeah, I might not progress, I'm not sure. So that's the main group. So these folks said, I'm mostly concerned about a lack of work-life balance. So you promote me, what's going to happen to my flexibility, my schedule, my routine? Other things, concerned about non-inclusive behaviors. So things like microaggressions, exclusion from meetings and projects. These microaggressions aren't necessarily blatant, overt expressions of hatred. It could just be, hey, we had this great in-person meeting. Too bad you couldn't come, haha. And if the person wasn't able to, maybe because they were in quarantine, of course, that could create a sense of separation. And some people even say that isolation can be equated to trauma at times. Lack of flexible working arrangements is another one. So if you can't be flexible with your work life, how can you go up? And this people are also concerned about work hours and other things and the mission. People see the pandemic as an impact, a threat, the pandemic's impact as a threat to their careers. So nearly 70% of women say they experience adverse changes to their daily routines during this pandemic. They believe these shifts have prevented or will prevent them from progressing. Also, this idea of the on-demand work environment, a third, roughly, of women who feel they always need to be available are concerned that if they are not available to fulfill this need, their progression will be impeded. So this is this conflict between this tension about, I have my family life, I have to take care of my, that part of my being, but then I also have to go to work. And if anything's going to pull me away from work, that's going to slow my progress. And I believe many people believe there are ways to manage those conflicts.
So we have a couple more slides here that go more and more in detail in terms of how stressful this is. But I think we've convinced you, and I think we probably didn't need to convince you how stressful this is for many of you. So I'm going to let you take a quick look at these as we go through. Some of this is what we have already seen. I think there's, I want to get to this one in terms of sort of an idea as to what stress is about and how our current situation, what we're experiencing, falls into this graph. Stress can be positive in terms of it increasing briefly our heart rate and mild elevations and stress hormones, etc. That's where we're excited about something. It's kind of a stress, and maybe we're a little anxious, but that kind of keeps us on a good edge. Stress can be tolerable at a more serious level where we're getting temporary stress responses physiologically, but these are buffered by supportive relationships. So we've got somebody we can go talk to either informally or informally, and we can pretty well handle it. We got a stressful job, we got some stressful home life, but we're doing okay with it. Stress becomes toxic when it is prolonged, and that's where we get into these physiological kind of experiences that don't let up. We're always in a fight or flight or freeze kind of modality. And that is destructive to us physically as well as psychologically and socially, particularly when you're under this level of stress and you don't have real good protective social relationships, then you're going to be very unhappy.
So like right now, we are probably experiencing positive stress. Like after the conversation's over, I'll take a deep breath, maybe have some lunch. Same thing with Dr. Caproni, and our baseline will go back to normal, likely. If we were homeless with some support, but not very much, that would be tolerable. And then toxic would be this ongoing just pounding of stressors without any support. And so it kind of helps you this 3-part model, I think, really kind of gives you a sense of like, where might I be intuitively in terms of my stress levels?
Okay, so I think a lot of this comes down to self-care. And what I would like you to reflect on right now is what approaches are you currently using for self-care? And so think about it. That can either be internal resources. You have a 20-minute meditation period every day. It could be professional help in terms of talking to a counselor. It could be informal social kind of networks, all of those kind of things. Could be, Eric mentioned his guitar. Some of us really can de-stress using music, either making music, listening to music. Some people like to dance. A lot of different ways, of self-care. So reflect for a minute on those methods you're using right now in the middle of COVID. And then ask yourself, do these self-care practices reduce your stress and enhance your wellness? Hopefully, you'll get mostly positive answers to that. But for some of us, I was talking to a friend of mine recently. He said that one of his self-care issues is cutting down the 3 glasses of wine that he's drinking every night as kind of a stress release. That has some problems to it. And some of our stress releases can be problematic. We might overdo our Amazon shopping. We might overdo that good Cabernet. So those are things that, we have to look at too. Do they really reduce our stress? Do they enhance our wellness? And if we're coming up short, either in the approaches or in the effects of those approaches, what additional supports or resources do we think we might need? Did you have anything you wanted to throw in on this one, Eric?
Oh yeah, I mean, these are very simple 3-part questions here. It's kind of, what am I doing? What's working? And then, once I find that gap, what else do I need to help with this process? And this kind of starts to open that avenue of like, where am I in terms of my stress? Like, am I just kind of stressed out, but I'm managing it, it's tolerable? And is my self-care routine working for me? If not, cool. Or if it is, fine, I'll keep working on that. Maybe I can tweak it, make it a little better. Or, are things starting to take a toll? These are long-term stressors now after a couple of years. Am I entering into a toxic zone or at risk of entering into a more toxic stress zone? And if my self-care routine isn't enough, what else should I do? What else can I do? Because we're promoting, or we're talking about mindfulness, contemplative techniques, at least in this session, and wellness. But when certain disorders do pop up, I don't think that self-care is going to be just enough. Maybe there's something to go speak to a therapist or a professional about these stressors.
And this is where we hope to do a little demystifying of this whole counseling process. Some of you, may understand this already, and some of you may be involved in your personal counseling or psychotherapy. But for many of us, particularly from different environments, I'm an Italian American who grew up in Appalachia. And in that environment, the idea of personal therapy was not real accepted, let's put it that way. So let's think about it for a minute. If you are entering into that toxic zone, your self-care is coming up short in terms of making you feel better. Think about talking to a professional, a licensed mental health person, who will approach you as not being a crazy person or full of psychopathology, but more experiencing problems in living that you can benefit from talking to somebody about. This is also, many of you, particularly those of you who are educators, the idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset will be something that you're very much familiar with. And that really is what counseling is all about. It's not an idea of, we've got it all together, we're perfect, but that we can all grow, that we can all benefit from looking at, stepping back, reflecting upon how we're doing, and maybe doing some things differently, that we can grow. Finally, there's, for those of you who have experienced the hardest part of this 2.5-year period, and you may have had some significant losses and significant changes in your life that really constitute trauma. One of the things that we also can work on in the context of either therapy, counseling, or supportive other folks in our environment is how we can grow from these trauma. We've all heard the idea of post-traumatic stress syndrome. Probably many of you haven't heard the idea of post-traumatic growth. And this is the experience that some people have who have experienced very, very severe stressors. The ground has been taken out from under them. Their understanding of their life and their world has been shattered in some way. That's pretty tough. But does that leave you in a position where then you can grow in a way to become a stronger, more integrated person? And these are some of the things that are available to you.
Yeah, and with the post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth, it's interesting because what happens, you can almost see like 3 main responses. So you endure this traumatic, stressful experience, and you recover, but not fully. You're not fully back to the way you were. You can still function, or maybe not, but there's still some recovery. You get over it basically, but there's still some lagging issue. The second one would be you recover just back to normal. I mean, that's it. So you were knocked down, you get back up, and you keep moving forward. But then the third one that we're kind of emphasizing with the post-traumatic growth would be because of the stress, the pain, the trauma, the resources that you have, either internal or the external resources like people, therapy, friends, and so on, can help you find meaning and grow back to go above your baseline, to go above to where you were previously before the traumatic experience itself. So this doesn't necessarily mean you have even greater functioning than before, but you have a greater sense of meaning, a greater sense of understanding, of what happened with this trauma. So different ways of responding. And if you are kind of like wondering, like, I don't know, should I see a therapist? Like, what are some of the signposts? What's the best or a few ways of determining when you should see one. So here's a couple of quick ones. If you've thought about whatever this issue is, about coping with the issue, it takes at least an hour each day, you might want to consider talking to a therapist. If the issue causes embarrassment or makes you want to avoid others, you can see where I could keep going with that. The issue has caused your quality of life to decrease. The issue has negatively affected school, work, relationships, so you starting to feel like a decline. Or if you've made changes in your life or developed habits where you've had to actually cope with the issue. So you've had to create or develop a new routine around that particular problem. So maybe you don't get triggered or something to that effect. It's a good idea to go talk to a therapist. Yeah.
Okay, so I think in order to make sure we got plenty of time, Eric, how would you want to lead us in another quick meditative process, and then we can open for question and answer?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just do like about a 7-8 minute relaxation session. So it'll start just by focusing on relaxation, kind of relaxing the shoulders, almost like a gentle progressive relaxation. And they'll move into something that kind of quality for the heart. We're going to focus on the sense of kindness directed at yourself and to others out in the world. So again, nothing religious, just something that can help you ground. And if you're a helper, what I find with these practices is that, yes, it is helping me in terms of my own feelings, in terms of feeling better, feeling happier, and so on, giving more meaning. But also, it helps me restore myself. So when I'm out there working with people, helping, doing therapy or whatever, I have this inner reservoir of goodness that I can offer to the world. So I'm kind of primed based off of these practices. So it's not necessarily just for me. That's not necessarily my motivation. Maybe for you, for your own self-care. But this can also go deeper into helping yourself as well as others to help you restore. So with that kind of idea and motivation in mind, let's just take a few moments just to rest your body at ease. You can just find a comfortable position. There's nothing really formal about this one. So you notice I'll slow my cadence down a little bit. My voice might change. That's just the process of relaxing. So the very first thing is to set your body at ease. Relax into stillness. You can allow your shoulders to drop. Body relaxed. If insofar as you're generally feeling that you're, like your mind, you are located up in your head, just allow that sense of awareness, that locus of awareness of being in the head. Just let it descend. Almost like stepping into an elevator, hitting the basement bottom floor button. And just let your awareness descend down. You go down through your neck, your shoulders, torso, down to the feet. Again, with the next out breath, you can allow your awareness just to descend once again, down through your head, shoulders, torso, legs, feet. Noticing any tension, you can just release that tension, just let it flow out through the bottom. And like a fragrance filling a room, let your awareness fill this space of tactile sensations, such that you're mindfully present. Present with the sensations in your feet, torso, legs. Can you notice any sensations arising on the surface of your body? Sensations arising within. It's kind of this expansive sense of awareness throughout the body, internal and external. You notice awareness, any sensations in the chest, up through the crown of the head. Almost like turning a light on the space of your body. You're illuminating the sensations that arise throughout this entire space. without visualizing your body. Just allow yourself to be present with sensations arising throughout this entire field. And as you breathe in, gently attend to those areas. And as you breathe out, relax. Allow your muscles to surrender to gravity and allow your shoulders to drop. Knowing that the ground will support you so you won't go falling through the earth. Gravity will keep you here so you won't go flying off into space. It's kind of sustained right here in this little zone. Supported and grounded. As we continue the respiration, settling it in its natural rhythm. Basically, that just means we're breathing in and out without changing it. With every out breath, just don't exhale and force anything. Just release. Let the breath release itself without forcing. Release and release until the breath flows in effortlessly, like a wave washing up on shore. Let the breath flow in unimpededly without pulling it in, without inhibiting it. As you breathe with each exhalation, see if you can relax more and more deeply, releasing each out breath fully. I'm wondering if you can also release with the breath any extraneous thoughts, memories, images that come to mind. Almost as if your breath, your out breath, were a gentle gust of breeze blowing away dry autumn leaves. As you breathe out without the thoughts, let them disappear to the space. Every out breath, return to the inner silence of the mind. Simply allow the next in breath to flow in effortlessly, without effort, without impediment. Whether it's long or short, deep or shallow, let the body breathe without interference. Just for 1 minute or two, we'll just switch our minds here. We're just kind of slowly emphasizing the breath, the relaxation. I want to invite you to bring to mind either yourself or someone who you would wish to be happy. This could be a friend, someone who's neutral, someone you are upset with. Are you capable of seeing that person as lovable? It's a very simple question. Whoever this may be, maybe you're looking upon yourself. As you attend to yourself, are you able to see someone who's lovable, worthy of love? Someone who's worthy of realizing your innermost dreams, heartfelt aspirations. If it's not easy to see yourself as lovable, it's okay. You can use your imagination. Well, someone else who loves you, who thinks of you as lovable, how are you viewed by them, by those who deeply love you and care for you? How are you viewed by those who have a close and very meaningful relationship to you, like a friend, a spiritual friend, partner? What qualities do they see in you? And as you get a sense of these potential lovable qualities, it's kind of true for all of us. We all have these qualities, certain qualities that are lovable. We all seem to want to actualize our heart's desires and seek happiness. So just take a very short moment here to imagine, what is your vision of flourishing, your vision of happiness, your deepest aspirations, and allow your awareness of your mind to illuminate this reality, this dream. What would truly make you happy? What do you seek? What can you cultivate right now that would give rise to this well-being that you are working so hard for? Just take a moment to actualize that, to imagine that happiness, receiving everything that you need to pursue that loving kindness, that happiness, fulfilling those aspirations. Extend that out to others who are also trying to seek their own happiness. Just have a brief wish. May you too, like myself, find the happiness that we seek. And may we find the causes of that happiness. And you can fill your whole being with this light of loving kindness. Imagine this aspiration being fulfilled here and now with everyone. And just expand that light out, radiating out as far as you are comfortable, as far as you can. When you feel that you've gotten far enough, you just let go of all mental imaginings. Release the space.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was very, very nice. And for those of us who came into this hour with a less than peaceful kind of sense within us, which was me, maybe a few of us too, is very helpful. Are there any questions or comments that you guys would like to put in the chat that we could address in the last few minutes of our conversation today? Thank you, Denise and Carlos. And let's see here. Trying to read this. That's from Polly. Glad you liked it, Polly.
You're getting a lot of positive feedback. I have to tell you, I was sitting here multitasking. Actually, I just gave an award to a student, won a $100 gift card for registering for VaxMax. Congratulations, Rebecca, out of Orlando. But I'm doing all this work, and then Eric's voice caught me. And it was so powerful because I've been having a tough week, couple of days, couple of weeks. And you just got me, Eric. Thank you very much. It was quite nice.
Or we could cap the week off nicely. Thank you for that feedback.
Very good. All right. Well, folks, I think this has been, for many of us, a very, beneficial hour. For some of you may not know it, but Eric Thompson does a Mindful Monday for us at 11:30. And if any of you are interested in that, please, I guess, Eric, they could contact you directly on that, right?
Yeah. You'll have my email in the presentation.
Right, great, very good. And mine is also.